keep that childlike spirit alive all the time, because it's very difficult to do in this world. And I think it's like the most important thing as creative individuals that spark needs to continue.
Hello and welcome to the Creative Lotus Podcast. On this week's episode, we have writer, director, and producer Kieran Valla. Please enjoy this episode. Welcome to the podcast.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to have you. So Kieran, I always like to start off every episode by asking each guest let's go back to the beginning and where it all started. So if you can kind of give us some background on maybe where you're born and raised, and kind of how you got into this creative field.
Yeah, so I was born and raised in Woodbury, Connecticut, which is nice. A small town in Litchfield County in the northwestern corner of Connecticut. Mm-hmm. And yeah, I grew up, my dad actually owned like a wholesale plant nursery. So I grew up on like kind of a farm to a certain degree. So yeah, I kind of grew up in the woods in Connecticut pretty much. Yeah.
Wow. That's cool. Were you, I'm guessing living in that kind of environment, does it make it where you kind of just grow up wanting to be like an outdoorsy person, or were you like the complete opposite and were like, get me the hell out of here?
You know, it was a big mix. Like I am really, it's funny. I've kind of gone back and forth. Like more recently, I've become really outdoorsy again in like the last like 3 or 4 years. I think the pandemic kind of pushed me into going back into the outdoors in a larger way. And growing up, I was outside all the time, you know, playing in the woods, doing that sort of stuff. But then, I've always been a mix. And then I sat in front of the TV also for like 5 or 6 hours a day growing up. So I always like sort of loved both of those things and still do. Yeah. Very
cool. Yeah. No, I love the outdoors. So beautiful. And I'm sure I've never been to Connecticut, but I'm sure it's absolutely beautiful from the photos I've seen and from what people have shared. Sounds amazing. So kind of going into education side of things, like what was your journey from, childhood into then like adolescence? And then did you kind of go to college or school rather, to kind of go into your creative field?
Yeah, so, when I was younger, I went to public school growing up, and I really wanted to be an actor for a majority of my life until I was about like 17 years old. And then in high school, we actually had a film class, an American film class where we studied people like Billy Wilder. And he's someone who I like really fell in love with as a director. And that's when I sort of realized, okay, I think I want to go behind the camera and do this other thing around 17 years old. And then I went to Hofstra University for undergrad for film and television. And and I sort of knew at a pretty young age of what I wanted to do and that I wanted to be in the creative, business in some way. And then I kind of found the focus with like directing and then eventually writing as well.
Amazing. Yeah. No, I love the fact that, you kind of, I think everyone's journey is obviously different, but, finding kind of like your path quickly, obviously, I think is like a great means to getting to where you want to go, if you will. So after you went to school, did you end up coming directly out to Los Angeles, or kind of what was that journey like for you coming out here? Because I'm guessing that's where you're at now.
Yeah, so I kind of went back and forth. So right after undergrad finished, I knew I wanted to come out to Los Angeles because I understood that's where the bulk of opportunities in film and television were. Right. And for a year I was here, and I first worked as a post-production PA for DreamWorks, and then eventually became a director's assistant. Nice. And there were great opportunities, but I wasn't necessarily the best assistant. I was good at doing coverage. I was good at doing more of the creative tasks, but I wasn't necessarily the best at doing the organizational work. Got it. And I really also kind of missed home and missed New York, missed being close to my family and my girlfriend. And so I was like, all right, I'm going to go back to New York and try and do my own thing a little bit more. And so I went back to New York and I lived there for 3 years, and did a bunch of short films, web series, like this beer travel show. And then I was working full time for a media company, and I did a lot of UCB at the time too. So that was, I was kind of happy with that decision, because in LA, I was working here, but it was much more like kind of like right in the system, and I really wasn't ready for that yet. I kind of needed to find my own voice and develop my own voice, and going back to New York allowed me to do that. And then based on one of the short films I did, I applied to the American Film Institute because I knew I had to get back out to LA again. And then I got into their directing program, and that's how that was my springboard to kind of come back to LA, but in a more like concentrated manner than I had first come out right after undergrad.
Amazing. Yeah. AFI is actually just up the street from where I live right now. So I'm always seeing the people going in and out of there. But no, that's amazing. And what was your focus when you went to AFI?
I was in the directing program there.
Okay. Nice. And then, I feel like for myself, at least, that's all I can talk for. So many people that I met in school, I went to Brooks Institute, which is a photo school. So that's kind of my background. But those people that I made these relationships with have like carried on for, years now, even to this day. So for you, was it the same kind of thing? Were those bonds that you created, maybe in undergrad, but also when you went to AFI, are you still able to work and, kind of co-create, if you will, with these other creatives that you were working with?
Absolutely. So yeah, I've done a mix between, live action, and then most recently I have an animated show. And in all of those projects, both television, feature work, animation work, I've always worked with people, both from undergrad and from graduate school. So the first feature that I did, it was a big mix of people from Hofstra and AFI kind of all coming together, and we shot in my hometown in Connecticut. Nice. To work together. So that's been really fantastic. Like we have a core group of people that have always stuck together and continued to collaborate with one another and help each other out over the years.
That's awesome. Yeah. That's like the best of all the worlds, being able to kind of, collaborate with people that and, you help them out, they help you out, and keeping those bonds connected. So my next question is, this podcast, I say this every episode, this podcast was really based out of 2020. Obviously the COVID pandemic, shut us all down. And it was really difficult for everyone around the world. But I found that creatives, have this tendency to kind of take struggle, and kind of create, creativity out of that. And so, my Buddhist background talks about this lotus flower being kind of the representation of cause and effect of, kind of the shit and the struggle underneath is this muck, but ultimately the lotus flower blooms out of that muck, and is this creative, beautiful flower, if you will. So I was asked kind of, what are some personal struggles that you felt you've had to go through during your career, both, on the East Coast and also here in Los Angeles, that you feel have ultimately helped you to create like this beautiful lotus flower of a career thus far?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think for me, there's all different sorts of struggles. I think there's ones that are more like, personal, internal. There's ones that are, financially related, which I think is one that so many of us can relate to and that I've struggled with. And then there's also, like familial ones, because for me, that's always been really tough because all my family's from the East Coast and I've been so separated with them. And one of the biggest challenges I had is, my dad passed away about 6 years ago now, and he was sick on and off, like while I was out here, and being so distant from him and being so far away during that and trying to get back east and stuff while I was sick, that was a big challenge for me. And I think, during that time, it was creatively, it was hard to kind of, use that and manifest that in any way. But, after he passed away, like, I think it did give me a kind of a different perspective on the world and a different perspective on life, and allowed me to like access like the darker parts of myself or areas of myself that I wasn't able to before. But it took a while, to be honest, because you're just in such a dark place for so long, and then like you're saying, something can bloom from it, and sometimes you don't even really recognize it at first, and then that happens. And I think sometimes when you have financial stress, sometimes that can be a driver to create and to do things and to work harder. And that's something that I've really noticed, especially if you want to have a career in the creative field, is there's not a lot of people that are like, you have to do this, we want you to do this, you just have to keep being relentless, and it has to really come from like a truthful place, like whatever it is. Because if it doesn't come from a place that's deeply rooted inside of you and your love for creating and art, then you're not gonna continue forward just because it's too difficult. There's just too many barriers, too many walls to break down. So
absolutely. Yeah. I feel like the hunger, of financial things, because obviously this city is not not cheap by any means to live in, and just to be able to kind of survive. And like you said, I think it's put so well, is kind of like no one's telling you or asking you to do this, this creative job, right? You really have to have the drive behind that. So I'm curious, kind of, where does your hunger or your drive kind of come from, in order for you to keep going forward and keep pursuing these projects, as you said?
I think a lot of it is being able to share something with the world and share something with other people. And I think, that can come in the finished product of a creative piece, whatever your medium may be. But for me, it's a lot in the collaboration, the creation of that. And I like doing that with other people. And I think that's what drives me towards film and TV and these mediums, is that they are such collaborative mediums where you have to come together with a group of people. And there's nothing I love more than being on set or being in an edit room and making those decisions together. And then, being able to share that with the world and share my voice and my perspective. It's how I like to communicate with people too. And, whether it's drama or comedy, I do both, but especially with comedy, to be able to sit in a room for whatever, 20 minutes, an hour, however long, and just be able to see people laugh and to join in that with people. I think that that sort of human connection for me is really what keeps me moving forward and keeps me wanting to do it. So
amazing. Yeah. The human connection is so crucial. And to be able to bounce ideas off of other people and other creatives, I think is kind of like how we, ultimately make a better product or a better, final result. So yeah, I love that. I'm curious, is there a highlight of your career or kind of an achievement that you feel personally really kind of resounds with you, but maybe you're not necessarily known for, but you really feel such pride in accomplishing?
That's a good question. I mean, I think what I like, maybe at this point, what I feel most proud of is probably the feature that I made, Delinquent, just because it was right out of AFI, and me and three of my other fellows at AFI, we decided, all right, we're going to make a feature, and we just went and we did it. And we went back to my hometown, and my family helped me, people I grew up with. It just was this, everyone coalesced from all these different areas of my life and my other friends' lives, and to come together to create this thing. And it was such a beautiful experience to create something in that way, where we were doing it all on our own and everyone was coming together for the same purpose. And I don't think you get a lot of opportunities like that. And I've done that a lot, on short films. That was my first feature kind of journey, doing that. Mm-hmm. And you only get your first feature once. You only get your first whatever once. And I just really try to cherish that as much as possible and recognize, how privileged I was to be able to do that. And also, especially now, having worked, within the studio system in Hollywood, it's a machine, and you don't really have that freedom ever again, as you will when you're doing something completely on your own. So, yeah.
Yeah. No, that's amazing. Yeah. I feel like, those freedoms that you're talking about, to be able to fully create and use every, asset that you have and your own creative, freedoms, is so crucial. But like you said, once you kind of get into the game, you realize that, everyone and their mother has a thought that they want to put into your project, and they're not going to kind of let you do exactly what you want to do, all the way through. So, yeah. So let's kind of dive in. You've already kind of mentioned you have this amazing animated series that is now, on FX, Little Demon. And so I'm really curious, I was only able to watch a few episodes before, this podcast, but it is freaking hysterical. Everyone, please go check it out. It's on FX and streaming on Hulu as well. But it is twisted, and you have such an amazing cast as well with, Aubrey Plaza and the DeVitos on it. So I'm just curious, kind of, can you share, give us the story behind it, kind of how you're a co-creator on this, and how did you kind of come up with this concept that ultimately, like you said, got into the hands of a big studio and was greenlit and is now streaming?
Yeah, so it was a long journey with this team. We started back in 2014, 13 or 14. We did this ring pop sketch, and it was me and my friend Seth and Darcy. We're the three creators of Little Demon, and Seth actually knows Aubrey Plaza from growing up in Delaware when they were younger. So he got her to come and be in this sketch, and we were making it for this one-man show that he does, and I was directing it.
Nice.
And it was just a insanely wonderful collaboration. Like, just on set, everyone just clicked. We just had the same exact sense of humor, and we had never all like collaborated in that format together. So it was just one of those things where we knew, okay, this is a match. And Seth and Darcy had an idea for this Are You Afraid of the Dark parody type show called Terror Team. And I met with someone at Comedy Central, and I told them about the idea, and that was kind of the first thing that we did together. We made this pilot presentation that Comedy Central picked up for this show.
Nice.
And then that didn't get picked up by them. It went over to TBS, and then we made another pilot for TBS, which is another live action project with the same group. So we had a few live action things that we made together that didn't get picked up for series. And then, we were trying to find another idea, and we always talked about, animation could be a good space for us because our ideas are so off the wall and insane. And we had this idea. The original kind of concept for Little Demon was more of a live action based concept, actually, about this woman with a cursed vagina. And if she gets pregnant, she would give birth to the Antichrist. So we decided, okay, that's cool. But maybe we can propel that story forward and actually have it where she's, giving birth to the Antichrist right at the top of the show. Yeah. And as we developed it, we're like, this needs to be animated, though, when we knew the scope and the scale of what we wanted to do with it and the places that we wanted to go with it. Yeah. So it was just a perfect fit for animation, and none of us had ever worked in that area before. So we brought it to the DeVito's company, and they got on board. Lucy and Danny got on board, and we had Aubrey already. And then they helped us take that to Dan Harmon, who obviously has such a track record in animation. Right. And from there, he loved the idea, and it just sort of took off from there. So
amazing. Yeah. No, it's interesting because I think no one really knows kind of the behind the scenes unless you're in the industry, and so for people that are like watching and listening, I'm kind of curious, can you share a little bit of, pulling behind the curtain of kind of how an animated series like this kind of takes place? Obviously a lot of it is voice acting, but kind of like maybe if you can give us a little of, from how do you go from your scripts that you're creating to then like the animation and the voiceover kind of working out?
Yeah, so the first and foremost, it takes a really long time to make an animated show, because you have the whole development process, and then at FX they just have you make the pilot, and then they greenlight you to series after they see the finished pilot and like 2 backup scripts. So to make the pilot itself, it took about a year, because you have to do all the initial designs. The script was already written at that point from development, but you have to do all the initial designs for the pilot, which can take a couple months. And then from there, you basically go into thumbnails, which are the really roughed out first versions of the drawings. And at the same time, you're doing a radio play basically with the actors, where it's like the initial radio play where you have them all record, and then you do the thumbnails to that initial radio play. And at that point, you can get an idea of like, okay, what's working, what's not. You can do some like small rewrites, cut some boards out, change some boards around, and then you go to more polished boards after that. And so after you kind of get your polished boards, simultaneously there's the board team and there's the design team. So the board team is just working on the storyboards, and then the design team is working on the assets, which are like the characters, the props, the backgrounds, all of that stuff. Because eventually what you do is you take your storyboards, your kind of more polished storyboards with your radio play, and then all of your design elements, and you ship them to another like outside animation studio. In our case, we used Atomic, which is a Canadian, Atomic Cartoons, which is a Canadian studio. And so they take like our storyboards with the radio play and then all the design elements, and they basically put that all together to create like a fluid fluid, fully realized animation. And so then we get that back from them, and then we have an in-house retakes team that then does work internally simultaneously while Atomic is addressing some notes from us on the animation. So it's quite a long process, like, you know, and then that doesn't even account for really like the writing process, which I kind of skipped over, which is maybe the most difficult part of the entire thing, because you know, in our case, in terms of writing an animated show like ours, and you saw a few episodes, it's as complicated, if not more complicated, than writing a live action show. It's the same level, and I think you know, it's something that I think everybody that's working the animation space is really trying to like push for more as well. Because a lot of animation, including our show, is non-union. We're not WGA. We are union, but it's through IATSE, through the Animation Guild, and it's not WGA. And sometimes I think animation writing doesn't get the same respect that like live action writing gets. But at this point in a lot of these adult animated shows, it's basically, it is the same thing. You're doing the same thing. You're breaking story in the same exact way and working at the same level. But yeah, so there's that whole process too, and you're kind of overlapping with some of the animation process as you're finishing the writing process. So it's complicated. Sorry if that was a little bit roundabout. There's just a lot of steps in the animation process.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing. Yeah, I think the difficult thing, I'm sure, is kind of, you know, going back to kind of what we were talking about before this, which was once you get it greenlit, then everyone has their inputs. Was that the case with Little Demon? Did the studio, you know, execs or people kind of start to kind of reformat, if you will, the series, or were you able to really, you know, stick to kind of what you had originally planned, and then there was just, you know, a few notes here and there to kind of change things up for the project?
Yeah, I think in a lot of ways, FX was pretty good about letting us make the show that we wanted to make and supporting that. And, you know, obviously there's feedback. There's some you will agree with, some you won't agree with as much. And it's just about having that conversation with them and just being open and honest about like what you're all trying to make and what your intentions are, and being able to justify those intentions. And I think the other thing we had is we did have Harmon on early on with us. He was involved in the beginning, and then kind of petered off as we went along and just let us like drive the ship ourselves. But he was also, you know, a strong voice and kind of helping us shape it, just because he understands that sort of sitcom animated style so well. And we also used his story circle. I don't know if you're familiar with like the Harmon story circle, but it's basically like 8 steps in a circle, which is just like a kind of a abbreviated, modified hero's journey that he kind of puts in a more digestible format for television. So he definitely helped train us a lot in writing TV and the structure of TV, which was really helpful.
That's awesome. Yeah, no, I had no clue about that. So thank you for explaining it.
Of course.
So now kind of going back to you personally, kind of what do you consider to be like your greatest weakness? But when you recognize that weakness, kind of what do you do to kind of transform that or kind of overcome it in the moment?
Yeah, I think my, you know, my weakness was one thing, and now it's kind of shifted. I think my weakness used to be not being firm enough in my own ideas and almost listening to like too many voices and getting jumbled in a certain way where I wasn't like carrying something through and not like trusting myself. And I feel like I've become a lot better about that. And now it's like a different sort of thing where I can get like lost in my own ideas, and then making sure you get an outside perspective. And I feel like, I guess what I'm sort of saying is sort of finding the balance in that, the sort of balance in, you know, where you feel like confident and assured about something that you're creating, and like when you aren't, and I think, I don't know, it's not like creativity and ideas, it's they're not always tangible. And I think it's just, and I think that's the biggest challenge for me. And sometimes I can definitely spiral or get lost in my own head in that way. Whereas I see some people that are much more like technical and practical. And I try to surround myself with those people a lot, to be honest, because they really help me in that way, where it's like, no, it's simple. It's just this. And I can like, be like lost in the clouds, making it much more complex than it actually needs to be, basically. So, yeah.
No, absolutely. Yeah. Thank you for sharing. Yeah. I think it is easy to kind of, be influenced by the people around you and kind of, lose sight of that, but then kind of, shifting that and, making sure that, if this is a weakness, then who can I employ to kind of help me with those things, to kind of ensure that it's the best of the best, for the final product.
Yeah. It's just really about surrounding yourself with people that where you complement each other. Again, it's like collaboration for me is a massive thing. I'd be nowhere without it. So.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I'm curious, kind of, has there been a moment thus far in your career where you made it or you felt as though, like this was like, wow, the pinnacle, I've been fighting for this moment to be able to do this, or specifically kind of a highlight of your career? Yeah.
I mean, it's interesting because it's like, I've never really been in a position where I feel like I've like fully like made it. And I know that's weird to say because I have a show on FX right now, but it's like we're waiting to see if we get picked up for a second season. You're waiting on other stuff, so you never really know. Right. Like you're always worried, is this going to like continue in a certain way? But I think for me, and I'm always like, I've learned because I had two projects that didn't go at like Comedy Central and TBS, where I was like, oh, this is going to happen. And I was younger at that time. And then it didn't. And I was so let down that now every step of the process, I just try to be as measured as possible and say, this is great right now, but I just need to keep working, keep putting one foot after another, because you never know what's going to happen, because you can't really control that much in this industry. But to answer your question, not to skirt around your question, to answer it, I think for me, like, one thing that was incredibly joyous this year and wonderful, where I feel like it's something I want to do, is when we went to Comic-Con. We screened the pilot at Comic-Con, and we had like 2,500 people in a theater watching the pilot of our show, and then did a panel. And I was kind of like, okay, this is it for me. Like, I'm good. I'm good. Like that's always been a dream. And like, I got to do that. And for me, like, it was so fun. And that environment is just so incredible too. And people are just so excited. And it's just a bunch of nerds like me. And it's just, it was a lovely time there. Honestly, one of the most fun times ever. So.
Yeah, so awesome.
That's when I felt it. It was more of one of those things where it's like, that's making it for me. It's like, it's like kind of like Hollywood, but like anti-Hollywood, although Comic-Con's become like really corporate, but like it's still like, it's like the nerdiest, like making it you could possibly find in Hollywood. And that's like, for me, the pinnacle. So.
That's so awesome. Yeah. I love it. Yeah. What does that feel like? I mean, obviously it's like I'm sure it's kind of surreal because, like you said, it is kind of corporate in the sense that like, now it's like all about the step and repeats, and then you have like all these, the adoring fans and everyone who are there. But then it's kind of like, you get these huge celebrities that are, coming in for it because, obviously like the MCU and all these other, premieres and whatnot. But is that something that, do you get kind of nervous, or, is it something that you felt like you were kind of in your stride once you got there and were able to kind of, talk about this amazing project?
Yeah. I mean, I definitely had a good amount of trepidation going there, but once we were there, I felt comfortable pretty immediately. And I also think we were around with like Danny DeVito and like Dan Harmon and Aubrey Plaza, and being around these people that are such veterans, and for them, they're so comfortable, especially Harmon. He'll just say, he says whatever he wants, and which is kind of amazing. And just being with those people really put me at ease, and it really allowed me to like open up and be myself more and more, kind of as that weekend went on. And like you're saying, it is so surreal. It is so like massive. You're going from this interview to this interview to doing this, and like it's just like you can't even really process it, which I think is in the moment too much, which I think is almost better. I think it helps with nerves to a certain degree.
Yeah, so. Absolutely. Yes. So I'm curious, kind of what brings you the most happiness now versus maybe when you first started out in this industry, not like as an actor and as a writer, and kind of what are the differences, if you will, if you noticed any?
Yeah, I think like more and more I just like learned to enjoy and love the process more than like the product, because I felt for so long I just was like always trying to like push, and that's like that is what you need to do. But I had a really hard time being present, and now I feel like I am getting a little bit better about being present, not just in my creative life, but in my real life too, where it's like I'm finally allowing myself to sit back. And I think that is something the pandemic sort of gifted me to a certain degree. If you want to say, if I want to say like what I got from it was like I went and started hiking more, I started reading more, I learned to slow down a little bit, which is something that I definitely needed. And I think it's really helped me creatively too, where it's like sometimes slowing down actually is speeding you up in all ways, because you're taking time. So that's something I think just being present and really just allowing myself to enjoy things and not be so anxiety ridden all the time. Yeah. So.
Yeah, no,
but I still love the collaboration. Like that's the thing for me. I didn't want to repeat myself, so I tried to give a different answer. But that's always what I loved, is just like working with my friends, because that's why I do this, is just to work with my friends. It's like, what's a job where you can just keep having fun for your whole life? And I was like, yeah, this is it, and be around people that you dig. So
absolutely. What do you consider to be kind of, or what is your work balance like, in the sense of, because you have multiple titles and kind of what you're doing, and they kind of all intermingle, it sounds like, but like going from writer and then also directing projects, kind of, is it, you write this and maybe co-write something and then you plan to be the director on it, or kind of what is your kind of vision for the different roles that you take on?
Yeah, it really depends upon the project. In the last like 2-3 years, I've been really consumed by Little Demon, working on that. And I've been working on some scripts on the side and doing a few other little projects. And right now we're on hiatus, so I actually have a bit of time to do some other work. And yeah, there's some projects where I, co-write and plan to direct. There's some projects that I'm just like writing with somebody else that I'm like, okay, if I can direct it, it's great. If not, I won't. And then there's some things I write completely on my own that I know I want to write and direct, and I want to get it made no matter what. Yeah. And that's like, I just started working on a new feature right now. That's one of those. And so, yeah, I love partnering up with people. Like a lot of my projects, I either have a producing partner or like a co-writer on it. And yeah, like if I can like also occupy that director role, that's obviously ideal. But on this animated show, I didn't direct because directors in animation often come from storyboards and are people that can draw, and I can't draw. So that's not something that I, was really doing. But obviously we gave lots of references, live action images, doing that sort of stuff. So it was awesome to be involved in that way. Yeah. But yeah, I just really try to like diversify too, because I love different genres. I love different mediums, and that's what's cool to me. And also you learn so much when you work in these different mediums and with different people and different voices. So I don't know. Did that answer your question? I'm not sure.
Yeah. No, definitely. Yeah. Thank you. As a director, do you kind of, looking to the future, if you will, a little bit, but would you want to be given scripts, that from other, writers to then be able to direct, or do you really love the process of being able to write it yourself and then ultimately directing it? Yeah, no, I definitely love getting scripts, as long as a writer is really open to collaborating and open to changes and everything, just because I am a writer as well. So usually I want to dig into that side of it. Mm-hmm. I think there's nothing like starting, from the birth of that idea and taking it to fruition. That's my favorite thing to do. But if I love a script or a story and,
I get the opportunity to be involved with it, then yeah, that's great as well. But like, like right now, I think like there's not, for me right now, I don't necessarily get offered like a lot of like scripts to like strictly direct at this point. I think it's more so like creating stuff, but that is an opportunity I would love in the future. Absolutely. Yeah.
Nice. So I'm curious, kind of, what is your like day in the life like? I know you said you're on hiatus right now, but just kind of curious, maybe like an overarching idea of kind of what is it like to like, what is your work ethic like? How do you kind of maintain your own schedule? Because, as creatives, like you said, no one's telling you have to do this. So we kind of have to make up our own, day to day. So I'm just curious, kind of what is your daily kind of routine or how you kind of keep yourself going?
Yeah. So I was working like 15, 16 hours days, like 6-7 days a week for like the last like 2.5 years, like on this show. And then also working on some other, developing some other projects on the side and stuff like that. And so now I finally, when I finished, to be honest, I was just like, at first I was like, how am I going to schedule myself? Like I don't have like all this stuff. And then I was like, and my wife was like, she was like, maybe you can just like chill out for like a few minutes. You kind of deserve it. You've been working like straight for so long, just like do whatever. So I've in the last couple weeks, I've really started to kind of schedule myself again. But for a bit, I was just reading a lot. I was starting to do some Duolingo Spanish, like just starting to like watching some movies, just doing some stuff. And now I'm kind of back to scheduling myself where generally speaking, I try to do at least like a 9 to 5, and it's not always traditional. Sometimes I'll work at night too. I'll get up later and work at night. But for me, it's just about like having a list of the things I need to get done. I have a list of a project, and right now, what my goal is like I have 3 or 4 things that I'm starting to mull over and starting to put some work into and develop. And as long as each day I can just get like some really positive progress on like one of those projects, that's sort of like my goal right now. And I used to like really schedule myself like before I was taken over by this show. When I was doing it, I really would schedule my days a little bit more to make sure I made progress. And now I'm like a little more like loosey goosey lately, where I'm just like, I actually find sometimes if I don't schedule myself so hard and I'm a little bit easier on myself, that sometimes I'll creatively flow a bit better. But
nice.
But I don't know. I mean, I'm definitely, right now I'm definitely in a phase where I'm just like, I'm not as like structured as I normally am, which is really nice, especially leading into the holidays and stuff like that. I feel like it's what I really needed, and I'm finally getting some fresh ideas again, which I feel like I was having trouble with for a while, just because I was just in grind mode, basically.
Yeah. How much time have you had off now? Like, how long has it been since you kind of not wrapped out Little Demon, but kind of wrapped out Little Demon and now are able to kind of take some time?
It's been like 3-4 weeks, not too long, and we still are.
That's very recent.
Yeah, no, it's very recent. I know it feels like a week off for me felt like quite a bit. And we're still doing some press stuff. We're still doing some promo stuff, because we were actually, we opened a mini room for season 2, for a potential season 2. Like what they do sometimes is they'll give you, a certain amount of money and say, okay, here, write a couple scripts for season 2 or start developing it in case we pick it up. So we were doing that as we were finishing the end of season 1, actually simultaneously, and that's why it was so insane in August, September, October, because we were doing both all at the same time, like finishing season 1 and starting to develop and write season 2. So we were doing like production stuff in the morning, writer's room during the middle of the day, and then production stuff all night. So now it's just like we're still doing a few little things, but yeah, we've had some time off, which I think has been really nice for everyone to take a breather. So
yeah. Absolutely. So kind of what's one thing you've learned about yourself by getting into this crazy industry and being a creative, both as a writer, director, and even actor?
I don't know. I guess maybe it's that like I do love this stuff as much as I thought I did. Cause I think you get into these things and like everyone tells you, oh, it's so hard. Like you're going to stick with it. And, and like, I think I've had a lot of friends that haven't stuck with it and like, and I think that's great. Like, I think if you love doing something else and you don't want to do this and you're happy and you can because like, this isn't the most balanced life. Like, and if you can do something else, then like that's great. And they're happy doing other things. And for me, I've always been like, I think this is all I can do. And I think I'm really obsessive about this. And like, I think I have to do this. And that's what I've sort of discovered about myself, I guess, that I am like obsessed with this, with creativity and art in the way that I thought I was. I don't know. That's not a good thing or a bad thing. It's just like, it's just what it is, I suppose. So,
yeah. Absolutely. Being obsessed with it is, I think it's more of a good thing than it is bad because it means that you have drive, right? And a passion for it. Yeah. The kind word of obsession is passion, I guess, is kind of the best way to put that. Yeah.
100%. And I just don't want to demean anybody that like, like hasn't stuck with it or doesn't have because, people can be passionate about so many different things in life. And I do feel like sometimes as artists, I know even myself and a lot of people, there's like this self-aggrandizement where it's like, oh, because like it's art, like this is like, the passion for this is the most important thing. And it's like, no, you can be passionate about your love for rocks and that's fucking awesome too. Cause that is art as well. Or, everything is whatever. I don't know what I'm saying anymore. I gotta go.
You're like, I'm just babbling at this point. See you later. Only a few more questions, I promise. No, I'm curious kind of where do you find your creative inspiration from? Like you're talking about like rocks and stuff, but some people find, like, it doesn't sound like you have had a lot of time because you've been so involved with Little Demon, but are you able to like get inspiration from films or do you go to museums and art galleries or are there specific, animations that you love watching or, whatever it may be?
Yeah, I think like, I think all of the above, honestly. Like I'm a cinephile. We just saw Tar last night, actually, which is nice. which is actually about obsession and creativity. But yeah, no, films are obviously a big thing for me, and TV. I was a TV junkie growing up as a kid, and I think I love museums and I love art as well. And I feel like a lot of times I don't necessarily like get like ideas sparked from that, but I think when I'm working on a project, I love going to museums and like getting inspiration for like visual ideas and everything. And I think for me, a lot of times the ideas I have are kind of they are idea or concept based. I think is where that comes from, and that can come from me listening to an interview on NPR with a biologist or just like a friend that I knew growing up that had a specific familial situation or a relationship situation that was interesting. Yeah, I think it all kind of comes from those places. I would have to think about like specific like ideas or really dig into them to understand where they're coming from. But yeah, I don't know. That's a good question.
No, that's a great answer. Yeah, I think you can kind of find inspiration from anywhere, right? But yeah, finding maybe what the specifics are is another conversation to be had. So, who has been kind of your biggest supporter and fan? Like you said, this is not an easy, career to get into and, consistently stay with. So has there been someone or some ones that have really kind of helped you to, keep moving forward and supporting you?
Yeah, I've had the privilege of having a lot of really wonderful people around me. First of all, my wife Laura, like she's been, my biggest supporter, has always believed in me. We've been together since college, so she knew exactly who I was when I was up editing till 4 or 5 a.m. in the morning when we met. And she's always like, had my back. And she's much more like, kind of like technically savvy than me in terms of like how to like navigate like life. Like, as I said, I have my head in the clouds. So she really grounds me a lot too, and kind of helps like me navigate, especially like this industry, which can be particularly challenging. And then I think the rest of my family, like, my parents as well, and my sister and everyone else, like I've always had like a pretty strong like unit, and then like all my friends and stuff too. I have a great group of friends and people around me, and community and stuff like that. That's always really like uplifted me. We've always tried to support each other, and never, try to let like jealousy or ego like get in the way as much as we can as mammals. So yeah.
I love that you just called us all mammals. It's so good. I haven't heard that in a long time. It's so funny. No, that's awesome. I think, yeah, it's crucial to have those people around you that, definitely support you, because, yeah, it can be really hard sometimes, in the darkest of moments, but they're also there to, clap along with everyone else when, you have a great win as well. So that's amazing. I kind of touched on COVID, but not really, but like kind of what was it that got you through COVID? And, now we're rounding out the end of 2022, which is crazy. And there's been so much, but kind of like, was it an easy process for you? Was it difficult to kind of, get through this crazy pandemic and kind of come out on the other side? Like you said, you've really been working for almost like 2 years now on this project. So that obviously kind of leads into COVID. So I'm curious, how did you kind of navigate that?
Yeah, it was an interesting experience for me, because we got like greenlit to start making the pilot like right before COVID happened. So I was like working like very full time from home throughout COVID. So it was a little bit, it was a strange experience, because we were in that like lockdown phase, but I was working like 12 or 14 hour days a lot of times. But I definitely still felt like very drained in that way that many of us did, because it was just like work, being at home all the time, and really no outlets. So for us, what we found is my wife and I was hiking, like I was saying, getting outdoors, getting into nature, like on weekends whenever I could. And that was really the savior for me, especially because I was just forced to be behind a screen for so many hours every day. Yeah. And I think I also felt this weird, I also felt so conflicted too, because I felt so privileged to like actually be working like during COVID, and to have a job and to be doing something like that. Just when you see like people that are actually on the front lines like working, or people that don't have like employment, just like like real suffering. So it was a psychologically it was a bit odd, because I was like, I'm so like grateful to be doing this, but at the same time I was so like psychologically like drained, and that's where I found just like getting outside and like getting into nature and just doing those like simple things like helped immensely, and just like really like recharged me, because you couldn't really be charged by community and by people, and that's like what normally does it for me. So you kind of getting back to the essentials, getting back to the basics. And I know we all started with our like parties, like our Zoom parties and stuff like that with some people at the top. Yeah. But that I think I did one of those with each group of friends, and then we were like, yeah, I think that's what most people did. And we're like, yeah, that was fun once, and then it quickly went away. So
absolutely.
But yeah.
So you tapped into something that I'm curious about. Do you have kind of a spiritual practice, or, a religion that you kind of helps you to kind of, take care of your mental health, as well as, kind of spiritually kind of go through this process? Cause like you said, during the pandemic, there wasn't really community that we could get together with, obviously because of COVID, but, is there something that's kind of like helped to guide you in that way?
Yeah, I don't think I necessarily have like a specific like spiritual practice that I adhere to. But I do meditate. And I also I think like yoga, like hiking, all of these sort of things, they allow me to like really be like present in my own self. So I think there is like a certain like spirituality that exists when I do that I feel like connected to myself and connected to the world in a bigger way, but I don't think it's necessarily connected to any like specific practice. Yeah.
Awesome. So now we're kind of looking to the future, and last few questions here is kind of, what are some goals that you have for the next like 3 to 5 years, or even 10 years from now, which seems crazy to say, but yeah, just curious.
Oh man. I think to continue, making a living doing this, and just doing what I love, and just to keep working with people that I'm excited to work with, and continue to do things that I love and to just really try and enjoy life, honestly. Just because I feel like for me, like one thing is I am such a grinder. I am so relentless that I've like just tried to like, you know, enjoy my life and enjoy the world and just enjoy other things. And like that's one of my major goals for myself as well. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's great. So I'm curious, this question is kind of weird. It's like flipping it on its head, but what would you say to your future self 15 years from now? And whether that's in advice, encouragement, or just a statement, just kind of curious.
Keep doing your physical therapy exercises. Keep it up. You got this. Wait, this is my future self, right? That I'm talking to
Yes.
15 years from now. Also, you know a lot more than me. You're much wiser than me. So I don't know if I should be giving you advice. You should be giving me advice. But I just want to say, you know, keep that childlike spirit alive all the time, because it's very difficult to do in this world. And I think it's like the most important thing as creative individuals that spark needs to continue. That's what I'll say. But you already know that. I don't need to explain that to you. Why am I? What is this? What's going on here?
So good. I love it. What's one phrase or motto that you kind of live by, if you have one?
Oh man, a motto or phrase that I live by. I think, yeah. I mean, it's kind of like do unto others, but like I think like that is I don't know. I feel like that's so transactional that idea as you want them to do to you. It's like, no, just still like do that to others, even if they don't do it unto you. But like, I think for me, it is just like, it's just, yeah, like be kind within reason as long as it doesn't endanger you. Be nice. Be not. Yeah. Just like be kind, put your best foot forward to like, help as many people as you possibly can, because yeah, we're all on this spinning planet together.
Yeah.
I don't know. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't know. I don't really have a specific. Let me work on that and get back to you.
Sounds good. Part 2 coming.
Yeah.
Coming in 2023. No,
Let me write. This is what I'm gonna be writing the next week. I'm just gonna be grinding away. No, throwing paper.
I need to find a motto for my life. God damn it. Yeah. No, it's so good. That's so funny. Yeah. No, I think it is true though. Kind of, you know, you do have to, you know, treat others how you would like to be treated, or, you know, show the best version of yourself will ultimately kind of bring out hopefully that of other people as well. So,
yeah, that's a good one. Yeah, that.
You're like, I choose that one. That's the one I'll take. So good. Well, that kind of wraps
the lower, the third.
Exactly. Yes, that's your title now. Actually, no. Yeah. Awesome. Well, that kind of wraps it up. I just always ask kind of where can everyone follow you on social media, or do you have a website specifically? Obviously, please go and watch Little Demon on FX and Hulu, because it is absolutely hysterical and dark and twisted, and it's so good. But yeah, where can people follow you at?
You can follow me on Instagram. It's Kieran Valla.
Got it.
Just my name. Yeah, you can follow me on Instagram. That's the spot.
That will be your lower third. Don't worry. I'll put that. That will definitely pop up right now. That's awesome. Perfect. Well, thank you so much, Kieran. I appreciate all your time and sharing all your stories. And yeah, I look forward to seeing what's coming next. Hopefully you do get a season 2, because it's so good. And yeah, all the other scripts and everything else you're working on, I look forward to seeing it, whether it's on the big screen or, you know, small screen streaming. So thank you. And we'll see you soon.
Thanks, Alan. Have a great day.
Thank you so much for watching and listening to the Creative Lotus Podcast. And a huge thank you to Kieran Valla for all the stories as well as the laughs. This week's Buddhist quote of the week is, "We are not merely passive pawns of historical forces nor victims of the past. We can shape and direct history, renewing faith in the capacity of people, individually and collectively, to create the future is the most pressing task facing us today," by Daisaku Ikeda. Thank you so much for watching and listening. Please give us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts if you will. Go ahead and hit that big old thumbs up button. It really helps out here on YouTube. Press the subscribe button as well as that ding bell notification for all new episodes that are coming out. And before you leave, if you're watching, go ahead and click this button button right here, which is a new full episode of the Creative Lotus Podcast. Until then, I said, let's talk creative, and I'll see you then. Bye-bye. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode of the Creative Lotus Podcast. I'm your host, Alan Zaki. Please go ahead and subscribe, rate us, and write a review, and follow me at Alan Zaki on social media. I look forward to having more amazing creative dialogues on the next episode.